Thumbs up.
I just want to say hello and welcome, and it's been so lovely to connect with so many of you today and from the past. And I want to thank each and every one of you for being here today. And I know Nick too, I've known him for a while. Misha asked me to do the service today. But we've all come to know him, and today we're celebrating this beautiful man and soul, Nick Nebel. I'm Carrie Usselman, and I've known Nick for several decades, along with Misha. And it's truly an honor to stand here and hold your hearts as he holds yours. Everything that Leisha's done to put this together, to celebrate Nick, is just exceptional. And if you haven't been upstairs and looked at those photos and all those mementos, wow. I didn't know he was in the National Geographic magazine with his spaceboat. That was pretty cool to see. You know Nick in different ways. Some of you know him as a family member, a friend, a sergeant, a teacher, an artist, a poet, an actor, a stagehand, a metal pourer, traveler, writer, videographer, fur, fin, and winged lover, comrade. What matters is that Nick touched your heart with his gregarious, electric, and generous spirit, and truly his love of life. Nick truly loved and lived, and he's left a legacy in everything that he's created, and within each of you that's sitting here today. It's in your memories, it's in your souls, it's in our contributions to the community, not just here in Oshkosh, but across the country and throughout the world. If you don't know this aspect of Nick, he is sprinkled everywhere. So we know that Nick wore many, many hats and was truly an icon in all the places that he contributed to. And just like he painted broad strokes on canvas and poured molten metal, along with chasing sailboats across the ice-covered lakes in the Black Rock Desert, Nick cultivated and inspired creativity in his art students, the iron-pouring community. He captured extraordinary moments as a photographer and videographer, documented countless remarkable events and people's stories, including the timeless voices of aviation. And there's a quote upstairs, and this is so true of everything he's done: let no story go untold. And you each have stories that you can continue to share with each other today and after today to keep his memory alive, wherever you are, with whomever you're speaking with, where you have those woven threads. One thing I learned about Nick, too, is that he was one of the saving forces at the Grand Opera House. And there's a beautiful bouquet on the table where you come in. And he deepened, he had such an adventurous spirit, and he deepened that through his travels as a rider. I know I met some of the Oshkosh riders earlier today, the ACEs, and he left such a lasting imprint with members of the 127th Infantry of the 32nd Division, Red Arrow Division Club, along with the American Legion Post 70 and the staff and the residents at King. He truly touched so many hearts, and today we celebrate him. And I'm going to do a little toning, and then we're going to light a candle. So hopefully you can hear this. I can imagine there's a lot of emotions going through your thoughts and your hearts right now. But this is for Nick, and as I sat and anchored in even more today, I could hear certain sounds, and I'm going to share those with you. So hopefully you can hear them okay. I really felt the wind came out to celebrate Nick today as well. Isn't it fabulous? It's just fabulous. And now I'm going to welcome Kate and Lily to come up and light this candle. And I'm going to get a little step stool for you, Lily. This. All right, there you go, Lily. Thank you so much. And if you don't know, Kate is Nick's niece, and both of her children call him Uncle. So thank you. And as you look at this flame, which we will keep lit until the end of the service today, the flame, the candle, truly represents Nick's beautiful light, his generous spirit, his kind-hearted nature, and his eclectic essence. You know, and when I think of Nick, I think of so many colors, and when I go upstairs, there's so many colors sprinkled on those boards and mementos and your smiles and the stories that you shared today. My dad and I create stained glass, and my dad's actually here, and it's his first outing since a hip replacement about a month ago, so he really, really wanted to be here. And he has taught me the art of stained glass, and we are so privileged to use some of Nick's glass and tools in our continued creation. So it's such a blessing, such a blessing. Lots of stories of hanging out over there and packing up all that stuff with Leisha. So his legacy also extends through our work and the pieces that we create and the glass that we use that he's also used. The next part of the celebration is for deeper sharing of our hearts. As you know, Nick touched so many lives, leaving many lasting special memories. And I'm going to call on a few people first, and then we'll open it up to whomever would like to speak with the remaining time. And the first person I'm going to call up is Nick, a longtime friend and colleague, to share a few words.
Gee whiz, so many people. Did I expect this? Yes. He knew a lot of people. Let me give my wits about me. Thank you. This is Alicia. This is pretty special. I don't think this could be any better. Nick started here a block away when he was born. And to have this reception here is a real honor. He actually got his wheels. He learned how to walk probably in this room or on this property at age 1 or 2. And he's back. Pretty cool. I met Nick in the 80s, and when we went home, met him at a bar. Now, how could that be? I met Nick at a bar. And I was enthralled with his personality. And Jane, on the way home, my wife, said, "Who is this guy?" And that kind of sums up Nick when you meet him, because he's very interesting, and he's infectious, and he pulls the best out of you instantly. And he is a people person. There's no one like him. And the really beautiful thing about him is his sincerity. Nothing is ever fake. He had the love for the theater, the drama. He made sculpture. He was an artist that could do just about anything he put his mind to. He documented artists as human beings. He documented his veterans. His veterans were special, very special to them. When he would walk up to a stranger and he had a hat on, he was immediately in that veteran's space. And I don't mean that, I mean that lovingly. And when I met him in the 80s, somehow we got around the conversation of his trip to California, and I became very envious that he was able to see Burning Man in its early years. And it's, for those of you who do not know what Burning Man is, it is a festival where anything goes related to art in the middle of the desert in Nevada. And he got to see it in its original form. And early on in those burning of that human figure was all made out of wood. The idea is what is our society, who are we, and what does it mean? And today it's a huge celebration where the actual figure is 30 feet tall. So I was always envious that I didn't get to do that. He did, but I was farming and I couldn't get away in the spring of the year. But that was the start of our interest in each other and our own commitments to our own work. Somewhere along the line, before our grandchildren were born, we asked Nick and Leisha out for a Christmas dinner. And it was always Christmas Day, and we would always, as a tradition, when our two grandsons were born, we do the night before Christmas. And so when the kids were born, they were 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 years old, and they're here today. I gave Nick the book to read the day before Christmas. And of course, Nick, if you know anything about Nick or ever been around him, he's a dresser. He likes to dress up, he loves drama. So here we have, Nick takes the book, he goes like this, opens it up, and of course he's dressed with a green little pointed hat with a belt on top, and he pushes the button, it goes like this back and forth, single bells, and he's got the suit on, and he takes a deep breath and he goes, and his voice goes, "It was the night before Christmas," and my grandsons, boom, yeah. And they're here, and they remember that. And he did this for many, many years until just last year was the last time he didn't join us. He became family. And I think he does that with many people who he comes in touch with. You immediately become convinced that you're a part of it. So, to move forward, camera in tote. And he did this at the iron pours. He took his camera and he captured the process, but more importantly, he captured the aftermath of the kids all grubby and dirty, and it's a messy job, but they're all smiling. He captured that. And he did the same thing in my studio with my glasswork. He captured the movement and the magic of the material. But in some of the things that we worked with, another thing that was special, he did this to the camera in tote on another level, where he spent the day with the Oshkosh Police Department driving around in the car, and what do policemen do, trying to document the essence of what their job is. Very creative, and I don't know if this was ever published, but he just loved that project. A day or a week in the life of a police officer. So I started doing collaborations with Nick in the 1990s, and I call this series of interactions with Nick, I call them Stuffed Tractor. Because I farm, and I wanted some footage of germination of plants, in particular corn, from germination through harvest through delivery. So it was one thing to be standing out and taking pictures, you know, when machines are flying back and forth in front of you. But it's a whole other thing to get into a cab that's only so big. Me sitting on one edge of the seat, my arm kind of this way, running thing, and my arm behind my back, trying to run the machine and the tractor, and Nick sitting on the other half of the machine with a camera banging around and probably hitting his head hitting the windows, and not easy to do. Looking back at this was one of the things that I really was the most fun, and it is stuffing a tractor. As mentioned before, one of the things that he is really, really proud of is the timeless voices. And I don't know if Scott Guyette is here, but I think it's he and company. There he is, yeah. So to all of you, he was very proud of being a part of that big project, documenting the aviation pilots' flights over Vietnam and other pilots. It's a big deal. You had pilots talking about things they've never talked about before, and it's all documented, and I believe it's all in private hands. So someday we'll get to see all of this stuff. And maybe Scott is here, he'll tell you the details on it, but very profound kind of work. And as Nick failed and got aged, Scott and company made sure that he got to the EA and got to the tent. As you know, that's a big affair out there. And Nick just loved it. And as he aged, he became the greeter. And he loved that job. So Nick had many, many hats, as you said. And he infected many, many people with his personality. He's a wonderful person. So I'd like to end this by saying goodbye to Nick. And again, he's back, he's made full circle. He's back here. So perhaps, Nick, I'll see you again. Perhaps, Nick, maybe you'll see me. Perhaps, Nick, don't call me Nick, and I won't call you. But perhaps, Nick, and directly, I thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Now I'm going to call up Casey. Casey is the great nephew of Nick. Casey, where would you like to stand? Do you want to stand here?
Yeah.
All right.
Just hold the microphone close to your mouth so everybody can.
Nick was a loving uncle to me and an amazing storyteller and a friend. But when he passed, it was one of the hardest moments in my life. He was a loyal aviation fan, a U.S. Army worker, and the very last words that I said to him were, "I love you." That goes a long way. Nick still lives on because of his family and will ever be in our hearts.
And now I'm going to call up Tom, who's also a longtime friend of Nick's, to share a
If you indulge me just for a second. I've always wanted to do this. Okay. An old tree once stood in the shadow of the crow. The sun clouds over. As a boy, Nick had a pet crow that would ride on his shoulder, and his name was Pete. Everybody's got a story. If your story has a chapter on Nick, you're one of the lucky ones. Nick was a poet. He and I committed poetry together. A photographer, an actor, an artist, a sailor, but most of all, he was a master storyteller. Kind of what I think Mark Twain was about. Often the stories were too long, and sometimes we would laugh so much he'd have to stop, and sometimes we would cry. But he was always entertaining and often factual. At his best, he carried on the rich tradition of preserving our oral history. Thanks, Nick. You have levitated me. Lost in a daydream, walking from the woods today, I was 5 years old. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Bill Christensen, friend of Nick's and a fellow American Legion member. And one thing I have to say, I did not realize his name was Paul until I had known him for about a year. And I thought, Paul Nebel, well, you must have would that be a brother? But no, it was, and then he did explain to me later how he came upon the name of Nick. One thing that was, that you did not mention was that he was a car parts expert at Napa. And thanks to Nick, I got my 1968 Malibu going. I got the universal joint. In fact, I took the whole drive shaft in because I didn't know whether the part that I needed. And this was before YouTube, before you could take a picture of it and say, hey, this is what I need. So I thought, well, I'll take it in. And when I thought, they're going to laugh at me here. I'm dragging this whole part in. And luckily I ran into Nick. He's like, well, yeah, this is what you need. And so took good care of me. So that was terrific. That was my first meeting with Nick. And the next one was as a Legion member. And I didn't really get to know him until we took a ride to Baraboo for the State Legion Convention. And I picked him up, and he started telling me about his life. And before I knew it, we were in Baraboo, and I'm like, oh shucks, we're here already. Well, luckily, we had the ride back, and I took him there twice. So I got the whole story of his life, how he got his nickname, and as a Legion member, he was involved with our kids' Halloween party, and he did his very best lurch. You rang, and he would greet the kids, and it was just great. And he made this, instead of a party, it became an event, because he knew people at the Grand that had the fancy lighting and everything else. So it became really special. He was our post historian, and we have a very expertly done last 2 years of our the history of our Legion. Last fall, Joe Youngbauer and I had the opportunity to go see Nick at King. And what was impressive was, first of all, he gave us this unauthorized tour of the place. And we were going through doorways, and there were buzzers going off. He said, just ignore that. Come on, let's go. And it was great. We saw I don't think there's any place in that whole building we didn't see, but it was terrific. Nick was a gifted person. When you think of all the things that he was involved with, the things that he did, the artwork, just listening to people that know him or knew him, he was definitely a remarkable person, and I would have to say that I'm honored that I was able to get to know him. Thank you.
Uncle Nick the neighbor. But Nick Danger, the video ranger, to us. So I met Nick through Leisha because we were making art together, and he came down there filming, and that was good enough for a couple months. And we said, put the camera down and put the gear on. And the orange, the glow, the rumble, the smell, it's addicting. And Nick was part of that. So on the back of this shirt, you've seen this shirt. He wore it all the time. This is from the crew. The very first Iron Pour shirt that was made. Yeah, hell yeah. And I was there at the Kohler Company the day that he put the camera down. It was raining cats and dogs. The furnace froze. Put the camera down, Nick, and he was right across from me. We call it shanking, where it's a support thing. It takes two people to pour metal. I was driving, and Nick shanked. And we poured our first piece together, and he flips up the hard hat, the visor when he was done, and he was just wild. So, unity through fire, we always say. And from there, Nick and I branched off, and we had something that was separate than what Leisha and I had. And Nick and I had these adventures together, and it's just ours. Those times going down to Whitewater, I drove, but Nick would take me down these pathways, and it was like, I don't think this is what Google says. But I trusted him. And the storytelling. This whole thing's the Niagara Escarpment. I mean, everywhere we went, he had stories, barn dances. There were so many things. And then you're there. All of a sudden, you would arrive at your destination, and it was like, how did we get here? And now I know your life story. But that is something that, Nick, and then Nick branched off even separate than me and met these other Iron Pour people. And then he went off to Miami. He'd go on these adventures on his own. He craved it, and he loved the attention. But he was such a part, he was always there. At every pour, he was part of our crew, and to have that connection through fire, through metal, which is everlasting. I am very lucky to have had Nick in my life, and I count myself as family too. And unity through fire. Thank you.
I'm Mick Alderson. I am a member of the Stagehands Union, IATSE Local 470. And back in the day, Nick was an active member of the local as well. This was right around the early 2000s. We were doing Phantom of the Opera up at the Widener Center. This is before the PAC was built in Appleton. And I was serving as the job steward. But all I did during the show was push the house light button. And Nick was serving as the props master, or head of the props department for the local stagehands. The first scene in Phantom of the opera company is doing a scene from Aida. And this is the one where they got the big elephant that comes wheeled out, and the big tenor jumps up on top of the elephant while he's singing. And then they turn the elephant around, and inside the elephant is hollow, and there's two stagehands in there eating a baguette and drinking wine. Well, they always used local stagehands as the stagehands in the elephant. They put them in costume. And Nick, as department head, was one of those two stagehands. Well, right after the Saturday matinee, he came up to me because he wasn't feeling well. He'd been kind of off the whole show, and he didn't want to, not do the night show because he didn't want to let the show down, but he was not looking good. He was looking pale and clammy. So I insisted we take him off to the hospital and have him checked out, and it turned out he was in the middle of a mild heart attack. So we checked him in, and then we went back to do the evening show. And since there was nobody else available, and I wasn't only pushing house light buttons, I took over his position inside the elephant and doing other prop stuff. Well, it turns out that I was not big enough. The purpose of putting the stagehands in the elephant was really to act as ballast to keep it from tipping over when the big guy jumped on it. And when they did it, the elephant almost fell over. Turns out, and so after that, we got a different stagehand who was bigger than me to take the position. But it just goes to show I wasn't big enough to fill his shoes.
I can bring the microphone back.
You can hear me, right?
Yeah. All right.
So, Nick worked at EAA, which many of us can see that out here. And whether he was volunteering or he was being paid, he worked as hard as he could, everything into it. And we were all privileged to work with him for about 20 years for me. And I just want to say that I have not been at a memorial where my cheeks hurt with a smile. And I think Nick would say you could not have done better.
That's really true. Leisha, you put so much of your heart and all these thoughts into all these memories that we've been blessed to look at and feel all over again through the photos and all the special things upstairs and down here as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it shows a lot of love. And you are, sister. You are. Anybody else? Well, I know after you can continue sharing stories, and I can share another one, a little one. I remember when Nick was filming the Tibetan monks, like my boys are 27 and 30 now, and they were just little munchkies. And he was filming, and he said, "Carrie, I have your boys on film." And I remember my son Lewis, I don't know, he was He was under 5, and he snuck his way up there, and Nick got him on film, and he said, "Mom, the mom touched my head." And it's just so sweet that was captured by Nick. And then the glass, and packing up the glass, and talking to Nick downstairs in the basement, and Leisha with the boxes, and packing everything so carefully. And it was during COVID, right? We packed during COVID. The beginning of COVID, I don't know, we were wearing masks and getting everything exactly upright in the back of the van, and nothing broke. It was pretty amazing. Yeah.
I'm Tim Taylor. Leisha's husband, John, was my little brother. But he's about this tall, but he's my little brother. My recollection of Nick, back when John passed, and I was farming, and I made a transition from farrowing pigs to raising from baby pigs all the way up, and so I converted a building for it, and I had just gotten 400 7-day-old pigs in. Never raised pigs like that before. But you just got to really pay attention to things, and Nick kind of walked with me through the barn one of the days, and I didn't really know him. He was, my perception of him is a little different, and I can see everybody else's point of view of Nick, but on my side, he did a lot of listening, and he had a lot of questions, and something completely foreign to him, and very interested, and a gentle person, authentic person. He knew a person that when he said something, there wasn't a lot of flower to the words. He listened to the words, and then later, even today, realizing more who he was. He and I were kindred spirits. I think I am interested in so many different things, and I had to walk away from farming because it just didn't work anymore for me, and realized at that time that I was very interested in so many things, and it's neat. I don't know, maybe 2 days of my life that I was with Nick, but he's a person that I remember. So, love you, Leash.
Love you too.
I can't believe I'm doing this. I don't like speaking into a microphone. And I feel like I'm out of place. I don't have a goatee. I have tried to think of a name associated with Nick. When Leisha married my brother John, so the weekend of their wedding, we met her dad, and my son, who was a teenager then, and my nephew, 2 of my nephews, I think, who were same age, similar age, were all in the wedding party. And my nephew said, "Oh my gosh, her dad looks like Frank Zappa." didn't know who that was. But anyway, I just thought that needed to be shared.
Hi, everybody. Who remembers the Valley Queen? Okay. Nick and I, my name is Christy Bradish, and Nick and I were partners in a theater company called Mysteries Made to Order. We got a contract with Betty Butcher. The three of us got a contract with the Valley Queen to put on interactive mysteries on the Valley Queen. And one of them was with Secura Life Insurance. And we made up a plot where the actors would come in, and there were a lot of wonderful actors. Some of you are in the audience today, where we were going to have a mystery about insurance. So for the few months before the, yeah, it's kind of a mystery anyway. A few months before the show on the Valley Queen, we had put in their salesman's newsletter Nick's name, but it was a made-up name, as the top insurance salesman of the month. And month after month after month, he was the top. So when these salesmen came to the Valley Queen to have their annual party, they all wanted to meet Nick. I'd never heard of him before, and suddenly he's selling hand over fist. So they're standing there talking to this one guy, and he's saying, well, how are you doing all this? And Nick is ad-libbing, as he always did, about what, tough life of an insurance salesman is. And, Carol Sawyer Brown, who was one of the actors, dressed as a bag lady, walked past him and said something, swore at him or threatened him. It was just part of the plot, we're leading people around with different clues. And the guy standing next to him said, who's that? And he said, I don't know. And then he kind of turned away. I don't want to talk about it. So he just dropped that hint. Well, later in the play, in the story, Nick, unfortunately, was a victim. And something terrible happened to him in the men's room. There was an explosion, and he comes reeling out of the men's room on the Valley Queen, staggering forward with a toilet seat around us. Dropped dead in front of us, and then we carried on from there. It was just part of the scene. But he was always so creative. He and Betty and I made up these ridiculous, outlandish plots that took people in and made them intrigued about who's the killer, who's the real person, what's going on here. And we had about 3 or 4 plot lines going, and it was the most fun. And Nick was the heart and soul of our partnership. He knew all about Oshkosh. He knew all. One of them on the Valley Queen, we had 3 women dressed as nuns, and they ended up pulling out machine guns under their habits and making off the Valley Queen on a little boat next to it. And guess who was driving? Nick. So we just had a wonderful, lovely time, a wonderful, lovely friendship, and I'm so glad to see all of you here who also shared that with Nick. Thank you.
All right. If you have a story and you'd like to share it, you can continue after the service, and I'm going to have Leisha come on up now. Nick's beautiful daughter, Leisha, always with a smile, just like him.
I'll just say, Christy, there's a bunch of wonderful imagery upstairs of you kids on the boat. So it's all up there. I know you got here, but definitely take a look. And there's food upstairs for afterward, kids, just so you know. And I'll mellow out and chill.
Yeah.
All right.
So.
Hi, darling.
Hey.
The best. Thank you, everyone. right out the gate. You rock.
Yeah, thanks everybody for coming and sharing. And Lily and Kate for lighting the candle. And as you look at the flame inside the metal, the flame burns always in our hearts. Always. And like a candle, Nick's light shined upon each of you and remains in you always. And the flame of this candle illuminates Nick's legacy in light. One could often hear Nick saying the quote, "Nothing that is complete breathes." Nick is complete in this form anyway, but he lives always. So may you extend his multicolored light, planting seeds of inspiration, just like the crow as the crow flies. And today, Nick takes his final flight in the essence of our gathering with the wings he received on January 16th of this year, knowing that his legacy continues in each of our hearts, always. He is now one with the salt of the earth. And I'm going to ask Leisha to do the honors to send him off as he flies with the crow. Thank you. And just how you all have this specialness in your hearts and see and feel the amazing light that he carried and still echoes everywhere. When I sat and listened, he wants to know that you are each amazing. So amazing grace, how sweet the sound. You are amazing. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. You each are amazing. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. You are amazing. That's perfect. All right. And now we'll do the military honors, and I'm going to ask you all to rise. And I invite that piece next.